My name is Wyatt, and I have a problem. The problem is the way I talk. I don't talk like a 26-year-old is supposed to. I talk more like a nervous alien who learned English by watching movies from the 1960s and has decided he's running for Senate, which is not a combination that makes you a hit at parties. I'm someone who picks my words carefully. And when I say carefully, I mean obsessively. I make sure to enunciate. I take the time to pause. I don't use speech disfluences like or ah. I casually throw out phrases like speech disfluences to seem hip. And I didn't pick up these speech habits at some fancy, exclusive liberal arts college. The truth is that all of my emphasis on diction and the false poise that it gives me are all just a carefully constructed cover. I have to put so much effort into each and every word that I say, because if I don't, I will stutter. I have been a stutterer for as long as I can remember. As a kid, I could barely get a sentence out. At that age, my tongue was like a wonky record player, always skipping, and the harder that I tried to make it skip, or make it stop, the more it would skip. And because of my stutter, I learned to see words differently, whereas other people see words as a means of expression. I see them as an obstacle course. Each cluster of consonants is a verbal minefield, just primed and ready to destroy whatever confidence I may have managed to build up. And also, side note, to whoever came up with the term stutterer, who do you think you are? What sort of sadist would label a child who gets hung up on specific sounds with a word that starts with an S, has a double T, and ends in a repeated ER? Stutterer, stutterer, stutterer. I can say it now, motherfucker. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that vulgar outburst. That sort of language is unbecoming. That is no place in a show like this. So, children will stutter for all sorts of reasons, both biological and psychological. I didn't stutter because there was something physically wrong with my mouth or throat. My problem was in here. I stuttered because I was scared. And here's where we get to the taboo part. My father was the victim of a violent crime. That photo, it's me on the right, was taken about a week before his death. Now, my father was murdered because on a Sunday afternoon, he went over to a neighbor's house to ask them to turn down their music. They got in an argument, and the man shot my father 4 times in the neck and chest. It was sudden and brutal, and me and my family have had to live in the wake of his death ever since. And while that man was convicted and did spend the rest of his natural life in prison, I began my life with the memory that without warning, terrible things can happen to the ones you care about most, and that the world was a frightening place. And as if that wasn't bad enough, later in life, I learned what song was playing that started this whole incident. You all know the song. It was at the top of the charts in the fall of 1991. That song was Good Vibrations by Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. Yes, that Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. And while now I can respect the lyrical stylings of Mr. Wahlberg there, as catchy as that song is, it will never give me good vibrations. So I start school, and I try to talk to the other kids, but I stutter, and they laugh at me. So I start to talk less. I don't engage. I hang back, waiting for that perfect moment to speak up, hoping that my words will come out clearly, that maybe they won't laugh at me. But because I'm not speaking regularly, I'm not building those mental muscles that I need. So when a situation forces me to talk, I can't help but stutter. And then they laugh, and then the cycle starts all over again. Now, the laughter was bad, but the pity was worse. I always hated the looks that teachers or other parents would give me when I would struggle with a word. They pitied me because of my stutter, but also because of what had happened to my dad. And the looks on their faces just served as a confirmation for what I already felt on the inside, that I was weak, that I was broken, that everyone and everything would just be better if I stayed quiet. And it wasn't long before my habit of not speaking earned me the nickname Quiet Wyatt. And my heart goes out to anyone here whose name happens to rhyme with anything at all, because children will just really gravitate towards any kind of rhyming nickname. And it's like they say, you know, sticks and stones will break your bones, but rhymes will really cost you a lot in therapy co-payments later in life. Yeah. So, because of my stutter, I spent a lot of time alone. And in those moments of isolation, he would turn to the comfort of fictional worlds in books and movies. I found that alone in my room, away from the pressuring and pitying eyes, I could read aloud with more confidence. I could relax. I would watch old movies like To Kill a Mockingbird and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington over and over again, awestruck at the diction of those leading men. Their words carried such power. When they spoke, people listened. They never stuttered. And looking back, it's probably not a coincidence that both those movies featured dark-haired fathers wearing ties. So, little by little, with each movie I repeated and book I read, I got better, a bit more confident. And so I started talking to my classmates, just a little at first. And slowly and over time, Quiet Wyatt stopped being so quiet. Now, the story of how I got from that scared, stuttering little boy to the passively confident man who stands before you doesn't have a eureka moment where I finally throw off any trace of my stutter and win the big speech and debate competition at school and am carried off by my classmates on their shoulders like in Rudy, all while my former tormentors stand by, their grimaces slowly turning into soft smiles as they break into a reluctant yet enthusiastic round of wild applause. Because real life doesn't work like that. I got to where I am today through dogged practice and a determined belief that I have a voice and I have something to say, that I wasn't going to let the tragedy of my past determine my future. These days, I talk a lot. It's almost as if I'm making up for all the years I spent with Quiet Wyatt. Now, during the day, I record audiobooks, And at night, I spend my evenings at comedy and storytelling shows like this one. But it doesn't matter how much I practice or perform or how many people compliment me on my voice, because that scared, stuttering little boy will always be with me, ready to pop out whenever I get excited or nervous or tired. Because as anyone who has struggled with this impediment can tell you, the worst part of stuttering is you never get to become a former stutterer. But thanks to places like this and the people who support them, I can end my story like I end my sentences, with poise and finality. Thank you. Hit it.
It's such a